What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video is the first official video for me of 2024. So I want to start off by wishing you a happy new year. I am dubbing this as the year of the Mamba in honor of the late great Kobe Bean Bryant. So whatever you're doing, wedding filmmaking, documentary filmmaking, narrative filmmaking, short film, I am encouraging you to approach it ferociously with the Mamba mentality, because you're going to get to your greatness. So hopefully you receive that. And getting on to the video, we are talking about buying your first mirrorless camera in 2024. Of course, it applies if you bought it previously or you buy it afterwards. With that being said, my boy hit me up. He bought the Canon M6 Markii, which I actually have myself right here. It is his first mirrorless camera. About 2 years ago, when he started getting into content creation, we landed on the Canon C100 Mark II for him based on the things he told me he was doing. He was working with a ministry. He was helping do some documentary stuff, non-profit, helping men learn trade skills, which is so admirable. So shout out to him for doing that. And we decided that the Canon C100 Mark II with the battery life, built-in ND filters, XLR inputs was going to be the best thing for what he was trying to do. Now, of course, there's no such thing as a perfect camera. So some of you watching is like, but why you didn't tell him to get this? I knew it was going to be something he can learn really fast. It had dual pixel autofocus. It didn't have it the way right now with the Canon C500 Mark II, where wherever my head moves, it's going to track me. Most mirrorless cameras can do that now, but just some of the features for him, I knew it was going to be able to work for him. And the main benefits of these mirrorless cameras are add-ons. It's not like, oh, you need to learn more. It's actually you understanding what this new technology is allow you to accomplish with less effort. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest benefit of having a mirrorless camera. So some of you watching this right now, if you have the question, should I buy a mirrorless camera over a DSLR? Well, here's the thing. If you're someone that is concentrated on photos have been amazing in most camera manufacturers. And everything I'm talking about in this video is going to be more geared towards Canon, but it's applicable to whatever camera manufacturer you're working with, right? Because mostly every Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, Panasonic, they've had DSLRs and now they have mirrorless cameras, and all of them make great mirrorless cameras. With that being said, you know, when you look at photos, it's always been able to take raw photos where you can edit, change the color, change the white balance. So if you are photo concentrated, being that mirrorless cameras is this new age of hybrid shooters, people are jumping over, you're going to get great prices. I remember when I bought the 5D Mark III in 2013, I probably paid $2,700 for it. You probably get that camera for $400 right now. So if you want to start off with photography, you want to master your eye, your cinematography eye, and you want to start off at an affordable price, getting a 5D Mark III wouldn't be a bad thing, or the Sony equivalent or the Nikon equivalent. With that being said, if you're someone that is a hybrid shooter, the pros and advantages that you're going to get with a mirrorless camera, if you have the budget for it, completely makes sense to invest in that, because you have all different tiers of mirrorless camera. I think the Canon R6 Mark II is almost at like the higher end of it. You know, you have the R5 which sits above it, but when I talk about a lot of features that kind of come in the Canon R6 Mark II, it's 24 megapixel CMOS sensor is full frame. You know, it has IBIS, which basically means, which DSLR cameras didn't have to my knowledge or recollection. Every time I move, the sensor moves, giving me more stability. So years ago when we were shooting with DSLRs, we used to put monitors on top of the camera if we was doing video, just to keep the weight down, so it wasn't micro jitters with the hand movement that was messing up the video. You did have certain lenses that had that was image stabilized, like the old classic 24-105 EF version over there. I even have the RF version as well, just because it's such a great, phenomenal lens. Almost the same concept, but it's a different mount. So, you know, just kind of keep that in mind. So we have image stabilized lenses. The other thing we have is better video shooting, right? Most DSLRs was like at the max, if they could do 4K, it was 4208-bit. Kodak, I know you're like, that's why I don't want to make this too techy. Just put it like this. We're talking about V12 inches in mirrorless cameras versus V4 inches in DSLRs. So V4 still can get you around. You can still create your content, but V12 gives you so much flexibility in case you need it. In case you need to speed up or beat a light or something like that. I'm not advertising that, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm saying. So this Canon R6 Mark II has C-Log 3. You know, it's a flat picture profile. When it came down to DSLRs, we used to shoot with Technicolors, Marvel Advance to just flatten the image. It was basically taking out the saturation and the contrast in camera, and we would get into our editing system to add it back, because it was better to add it on a computer than the little computer on board of a DSLR, where mirrorless cameras now are so much more, you know, greater. It's newer technology. technologies. It's a new operating system. If you have an iPhone, I don't think you're using iOS, 5. You're using the new Safari or whatever. I think we got 17 now, whatever it is. So this is what mirrorless cameras are able to provide. The other thing about it is on a DSLR, digital single lens reflex, the sensor moved every time you take a picture. So because of that, you was limited to the lenses that you can adapt to a DSLR body. Mirrorless camera, the lens doesn't move. So, years ago when you wanted to hook up a cinema lens to like a Canon 7D, you have to take it over to hot rod cameras and be able to have it rigged out and modified to be able to put a cinema lens. With the right adapter and RF lenses, EF mount lenses, you can attach any lens. So you look at something like this, the Helios. This is the Helios 44, which is a vintage lens, which is something I do recommend if you're someone that want to try out vintage lenses. I think it's like a $55 lens. I think I bought it from Amazon. If I can find the link, I'll put it down below. With that being said, I have an EF to RF mount adapter to mount this on my Canon R6. So you're not gonna have autofocus, keep in mind when you're shooting with vintage lenses, but you have the ability to adapt this right onto your camera. And you also have, like, with the electronic LCD viewfinder, if you're shooting in manual mode, you have brackets to see how close you're in focus or not in focus. So that's something that DSLRs was not able to provide, as well as most, some DSLRs had LCD viewfinders that flipped out, but most of these mirrorless cameras have it now. And then because it's electronic, I can really get the new brightness, the new nits, to get the low tracking shots and stuff like that. So that's something that is the big benefit. So before I go on to other different things, if you are shooting with a mirrorless camera, you accept that you want this hybrid shooting life, please, I encourage you to shoot log. Some of you might be a little hesitant because you're like, log, I don't know how to grade flat picture profile. Information is applicable to all camera manufacturers. They all provide a Rec 709 LUT for you to take it out of flat picture profile to bring it into 709, and you're still gonna have all that flexibility. So all you have to do is when you go into your, whether it's Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, Adobe, just slap on the camera manufacturer provided LUT and you're back there. Just make sure when you're in your camera, and you're on your camera, and when you start shooting C-Log 3, because you're going to be able to get 422 10-bit only when shooting in log. If you don't shoot log on a Canon R6 Mark II, you're going to get an 8-bit codec, and the benefit of the 10-bit and the 422 far outweighs any trepidations of just, oh, I'm just going to shoot just because it looks better in camera. Don't worry about that. Use the Canon provided LUT. When you go into the menu system under Canon log settings, when we in the Canon log settings, we click on that, you can see Canon C-Log 3. Block my face. Hopefully you can see that. And then we shoot color space cinema gamut, and we're gonna get that flat picture profile. And then if you see view assist right here, where the view assist on, now you don't have to worry about it. You're not gonna see the flat picture profile until you bring it on your computer. And don't be afraid. What you seen on the back of the screen when you have view assist on is the Rec 709 color space, and when you bring it into your NLE, your editing system, you're going to be able to get the same colors and have more flexibility to get more to do your look. So if you want to go orange and teal and all those different things, it's just worth it. It's not raw, but it is a log flat picture profile giving you a greater dynamic range. It's worth it. Trust me, I'm gonna emphasize it. Shoot log if you have a mirrorless camera. So that's a huge benefit. The other thing about it is most mirrorless cameras now, they have new technology in terms of being able to use the USB-C port. The reason why I love the USB-C port, because I'm almost at all USB chargers again, which is a beautiful thing. I didn't want to leave Android for a long time, but because I added with a Mac, I have a MacBook Pro, I have iMacs and all these other different things, it made sense to be iOS. I don't have to worry about viruses. So this is not a debate on which is better, iOS or Android. It's just, for me, Apple was working for me, but I hated the fact that they kept trying to hold us, hostage with the lightning port. So now you take my Canon R6 Mark II, I have a USB-C, you get the right cable with the fast cables. You can get some cheaper cables, but I can now hook this into this camera. Then I have a portable charger. with PD, power delivery. Always get PD. I highly recommend spending the extra money to get a power delivery portable charger, because now you can charge your MacBook, you can charge your camera. It just gives you greater flexibility. So you see that charging, and now you look on the back of my camera, that's charging. So when you're doing long takes, as I said originally, I recommended my boy get the Canon C100 Mark II because of the fact of the battery life. So now when it comes down to if I'm shooting something, I need a little extra battery life, I can rig up that portable charger to the Canon R6 and extend the battery life, and not have to worry about overheating. And most of these new mirrorless cameras, there's no more time limit that you had with DSLR, which was like 29 minutes and 59 seconds. So outside of overheating, you don't have to worry about it cutting off and you having to start record for some of you doing longer tapes. So I think that's a huge benefit, as well as, you know, them having a mic jack. So now I can get headphones and see what the sound like when I plug into it. But the other reason why I like the Sennheiser MKII 400 mic is that if you don't have a mic jack, which I don't know a mirrorless camera that doesn't, you can plug your headphones into the Sennheiser MKII 400 as well. So, but just remember to turn down the gain in camera. Let me tell you that. You got the Sennheiser MKII 400 on top. We go over to the audio sound recording. As you see, it's in manual. And from that record level, I have it very low. And what that allows me to do is that the audio, because it's the battery powered mic with audio gain, is going to allow me to let the mic, which is going to have richer quality, do the heavy lifting. So make sure you adjust that sound. The things that you need for a DSLR for the most part is going to be the same things that's going to carry over to a mirrorless camera. You're just going to have greater flexibility and more benefits in using it. So you had a mic on, a shotgun mic on the DSLR, you're gonna have one on a mirrorless camera. You know, you got the LCD viewfinder, which I highly appreciate. You got the unlimited record time now. You have the ability for the USBC ports to charge the camera. You can also do streaming. You know what I mean? So I can hook this up to my computer if I want to do Canon live video chatting. I think you might have to pay for it now. In the past you didn't, but I think it might be if you want 4K streaming. But I would still do 1080p because you're still gonna get a streaming that has a shallow depth of field, which is insane. So just kind of keep that in mind. Battery life for mirrorless cameras, I'm not gonna say is less than DSLRs. You know, like I said, this is not a comparison videos. I'm just talking about some things that you might be thinking about. For Canon is really good. I think for Sony, and Sony is a great camera manufacturer and brand, their battery life is one of the kryptonites. You know what I mean? If you was to give them one, they got great low light capabilities, but one of the kryptonites of, you know, Sony is that the battery life does go really fast. But there's a lot of technology that's running with mirrorless cameras. As we said, there's no sensor that move, so that gives you a shorter flange distance, which means you can attach more lenses. But with that, it's better face tracking, less chromatic aberrations, you know, better image quality, but system is taking up more energy, so the batteries are spinning a little bit faster. But I will say Canon, you know, in the mirrorless cameras, I think the battery has been great. One of the things I recommend outside of the Canon brand, which I have two of them, the LPE6H, which is going to give you more efficiency, because some of the older LPE6 batteries do work, but the LPCEH gives you about like 15% more battery life. But I also like what SmallRig is doing with the USB-C chargeable batteries, and I bought a couple of these just because, like I said, I'm back to USB-C cables, so I know if I got my MacBook Pro with me to offlet footage, then I can just plug this right in, charge it. If I got my DJI Maverick, that's USB-C. If I have my Osmo Action 4, if I have my Instago 3, my R6, my new iPhone 15 Pro Max, USB-C. Like, I can literally go on vacation, have 1 or 2 power chargers, and I'm going to be charging everything with USB-C, which I am excited about. So check out the SmallRig battery. Shout out to them for having this, and they have it for other, you know, camera brands as well. So it's not just exclusive to mirrorless cameras, but just, you know, that's a huge benefit of the USB-C. So some other things that kind of cover it for the most part. If you've been shooting with DSLRs or other cameras, a lot of the things you like is going to carry over. As I don't know, I talked about, because I'm trying to keep this video a little short, but the same lenses you loved on a DSLR, you're gonna love on a mirrorless camera. My preferred lens is the 24-70 f2.8. It's a walk around lens. One of the things about these new mirrorless design lenses is that it has a assignable control ring, so I can assign this control ring to be ISO aperture on the fly. So if I'm holding the shot, instead of having to click with my hand and take this movement right here, I can literally adjust on the fly just like that, which I appreciate. And then this has has IS where the EF version did not. The image quality is sharper, but it's not to sleep on those old EF mount lenses, because there's still L series lenses and G master lenses for Sony and other camera manufacturer equivalent. So for some of you starting out, it might be a good thing for you to do a situation like this. What you see, this is the Canon EF 85mm f1.2 version 2. This was originally a $2,000 lens. I picked this lens up for $500. So with that being said, you're like, why didn't you get the RF version? I don't shoot a lot of photography. From time to time I do, and I don't use the 85 a lot. You know, if I'm doing cinema, which I have an 85 millimeter for cinema, so if I'm shooting a film, I do love the 85mm for a close-up, but I don't really use it for corporate or running gun shooting that much. It's a heavy lens, it's an expensive lens, so that's why I didn't get the RF version, because it's like $2,500. I don't use it. I spent $2,500 on this one. With that being said, I still understand the value of something like this in my kit, especially at $500. You know what I mean? I tested it out, I loved it, I just didn't use it enough to invest in it. But now being able to get the EF version, and I have the EF to RF mount control ring adapter to go on to the Canon R6, and the quality out of this is amazing. Like, I always respected the quality from the 85, but I also respected that I don't have an endless supply of money, and I'm not going to spend $2 grand on a lens. I only use about 5%. I think if you use a lens, you know, anywhere from 40% of the time and more, it's worth spending that money on. Or if you got the coins, then get what you want to get. With that said, I wanted to use, you know, a very, you know, fiscal approach to my acquiring gear. So it's simple. This is the EF mount. We put the adapter on, we strap it on. I get all the same features: the autofocus, lock it in. This is a signable control ring. You have the cheaper model one, which is right, where do I have it at? I thought I had it over here. Is this the original? Nope, that's not the original. Yeah, you have the smaller mount version ones that don't have a control ring, which sometimes came with some of your cameras, but you can pick it up for like $125. I bought mine's used for $160. I bought the one with the control ring adapter for, no, I bought the original one without a control ring adapter for about like, yeah, like $60 used. You know, you can get a good price when people buy one. It comes in a box. With this one, I think I spent about $120. I think it's originally $199. But the features I'm able to get with this 85mm, I can still slap it on to my Canon R6 and my C70 right here. I'll show you, because this is a mirrorless camera with the RF mount. For some of you asking, RF mount, yeah. So the RF mount is just the Canon name of the Canon mirrorless mount, so just kind of keep that in mind. RF is not the only mount they had. I think you had the, and I had it for a little bit. I had the Canon M6 was a mirrorless camera as well, but it was a different mount. It was the EOS M mount. So just make sure you're paying attention to the mount. So this is an EF lens, and I have the Canon C70 as an RF mount. So I can take my RF mount lenses, mount it to my Canon C70, get all the features I would have if this was mounted on an EF camera, and that's just a worthy thing to have. And this is a great combination if I was trying to get extreme close-up or a nice little, you know, portrait kind of look. If I was shooting an interview, this 85 on the C70, butter. It's butter, baby. It's butter. So let's put this back on. Oh, the C70 is not a mirrorless cam. Well, it's a mirrorless cinema camera, but it doesn't, the sensor doesn't close. So always be careful. Make sure you have, with all these cameras, one thing, mirrorless camera, DSLR, always have this. It's worth it. Rocket blower is so worth it to just protect your lens. I can't tell you, you have $5,000 worth of gear, $10,000 worth of gear, and you just take a shot and you got dust particles in your shot. That's no bueno, no bueno. So C70 back here on the dock. Getting back to the mirrorless camera aspect. So we talked about it. You can convert these lenses. For some of you right now that's buying a mirrorless camera, I recommend the RF lenses. I think they're extremely better than the EF version, but not to the point where sometimes it's bang for the buck. So you get something like the EF 35 version 2 or even a version 1, but if you get the version 2 and you see it for $500, I would tell you to get that over a RF lens, just because right now they don't have an L series 35mm out. They have this one right here, which is the RF 35mm 1.8 macro lens. I love this. This is probably my favorite lens, bang for the buck on a mirrorless camera, you know. And it'd be the same if I was on a Sony equivalent, mainly because the 35mm is a storyteller lens. It's a prime lens, going to give you low light capabilities, as well as the low light capabilities. Because it's image stabilized, it's adding more stabilization to the camera. So with the coordinated image stabilization, I'm getting from 7 to 8 stops. Some of you are like, why 7 to 8? Well, because the R6 also has digital IS image stabilization built in the camera, I don't really use it just because it crops in it on image. And I think with the IS that I'm getting from the lens and the IS from the IBIS in the camera, that's more than enough for any handheld situation. I literally do vlogs, mounting the camera to the top of the car, and it's still stabilized and smooth. So I appreciate that. But this is my favorite lens, my lens that I would recommend if someone's starting out in your budget, if your budget can afford it, to get the 35mm. But if you're new, this is the biggest thing I always tell people. I don't want you buying gear and the first thing you got to think is, how do I make my money back immediately? It just takes away from your ability to develop your artistic eye and artistic creativity, because if you're operating from a place of scarcity, it's hard to operate for a place of finding your greatness. So literally, I would recommend the Nifty 50, which is, I have the EF version as well. This is the RF version, still small, light compatible. It does have a control ring, but you have to choose between it being a control ring or a focus ring, where, you know, the more expensive one, this one is $399. It has the control ring and the focus ring. As I said, it's a slidable ring, so I can adjust it to be ISO, aperture, whatever it is on the fly. With this one, you have to pick one which you want it to be. And it's not that bad of a deal, because if you was making it a control ring to assign something to it, mind you, the face tracking on these things is phenomenal. That's the reason why you're coming over to one of the biggest benefits of mirrorless cameras is the tracking is a lot faster than the traditional DSLRs, just because the technology is newer. So just kind of keep that in mind. So we have these two lenses right here. Then you have some other options, like I have the RF 16mm. Now, this is a lens that I really appreciate. It's only a f2.8, but if I was doing real estate photography, I wouldn't be shooting low light with this lens anyway. But the benefit of a lens like this is that I can strap it onto my Canon C70. It's going to be a 24mm equivalent. So for some of you watching this video, keep in mind, you either have a full frame or you have a crop sensor. So when you buy these lenses, just kind of factor that in, because, you know, you have something like this in your kit, I think is going to be able to cover most real estate photography. This is like $199, which is a great price. You know, light, compact, and still built, you know, built with a certain level of quality, which I appreciate about it. Other thing is, I also have the 24. The RF 24mm is very much so just like the 35mm. It's more expensive. That's the reason why I recommend the 35. But if you're someone like the C70 is your first camera, as I said, I love 35mm as a starter focal length, just because it gives you a little bit more range, a little bit more ability to use it as a vlogging camera. You can use it as a cinema camera, and then if it has macro capabilities to get those detailed shots, that's the beautiful thing. This 24 is a 35mm equivalent on my C70. So it's like, why do you have the 20? Because for my C70, this is my 35. So keep that in mind. And in terms of comparing, you take something like the 24 Sigma. Sigma is a brand I still highly recommend. I have, just because my A camera is not an RF mount. You cannot adapt the RF mount lens to an EF mount camera, but you can take an EF lens and adapt it to an RF mount camera. Hopefully you catch that. So this lens is what I use on my C500 Mark II when I'm shooting interviews and I want to get a shallow depth of field. But you see the difference. Like, I wish my C500 was RF mount. That's the only thing I wish it had, because if I could put this little lens and run and gun with this versus this lens, it's no brainer. This has macro, is image stabilized, is silent, where this one is not so silent. But I gotta say, the image quality with Sigma Art is doing is phenomenal. Canon, if you're watching, please just open it up. Let the third-party lenses come in. I know you're building up a nice little lineup, but let Sigma back in the game. I appreciate having the option of Sigma, but as a business and an investor in Canon, I kind of get it as well. I need my stock prices up, so if you got to hold on to only Canon native lenses, it is what it is. RF mount is so great. Red uses this. Red V-Wrap that uses RF mount, so that's how great the RF mount is. You know, just kind of keep that in mind. But Sigma Art, still love you, and I still use this just because when I put this on, you might be like, well, you got the cinema lenses, which is the EF mount, but this gives me autofocus. So when I'm doing 2-camera shooting and I'm doing it by myself, having an autofocus lens with a 1.4 aperture is butter, baby. So we're gonna put this lens back. we talked about this lens, which is great. I highly recommend this lens as well. If you're someone shooting a lot of landscape, a lot of events, you know, 24 might be the way to go for you. I still prefer the 35. I just feel like it's very flattering for the face when you want to get close-ups, interviews, and stuff like that. And the other beautiful thing about it is that with the 35, most of these mirrorless cameras are downsampling from a higher sensor. So as I said, my R6 is a 4K camera, but it downsamples from a 6K sensor. So I can enable crop on the R6 and convert the 35 to a 50. And when I convert it to a 50, I have a other lens right there on the fly, and it's minimum image quality loss because it is a 6K sensor. And you could crop it in post as well to give you that flexibility. We're gonna put this lens back. One little honorable mention: RF 28mm lens. You know, it's a pancake lens. I never really was big into it, but when it comes down to vlogging, which I do, which my R6 is mainly my vlogging, sometimes my C camera, because it has C-Log 3, it matches with my C500 Mark II and my C70 very, very well. Doesn't have C-Log 2, which is what I prefer to shoot with, but it still gives me that flexibility. And both of my cinema cameras have C-Log 3, so if I'm doing a 3-camera shoot, I do shoot with C-Log 3. It is limiting the dynamic range in my A and B camera, but it's worth it to sync up. And you can still use plugins like Cinema Match to match C-Log 3 to C-Log 2, so that is a ability to do so. And if you're using it as like quick inserts, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference. It holds up very, very well. But the honorable mention is the RF 28mm. I'm not a big fan of pancake lenses, but when I started vlogging, I was just like, as I said, the 24mm is just a little too wide, because, you know, wider lenses make your face bigger. You know, that's why the 85mm is such a favorite for portrait photography, because of the compression. It's more flattering. So being able to have a 28mm this size, this small, it's only an f2.8, but truthfully, I don't really shoot wider than f2.8 when I'm shooting a vlog. I want a nice shallow depth of field because this is a full frame camera. It's giving me that, but the covert, the size, and all these other things is so worth it. It doesn't have IS, but it's okay. As I said before, I have 5 stops of image stabilization in body in the camera. So if you're someone starting out with a Canon R8, I probably wouldn't recommend this. I would recommend you spend the extra money to go get the 24mm or the 35mm, because those lenses are image stabilized. And with R8, it doesn't have IBIS built in. So where you're saving money on $1,000 by not having IBIS in your camera, spend a little bit of extra money getting an IS lens. So R8 buyers, EOS R buyers, you know, I would skip this lens, the RF 28mm, but if you're someone that has older R6 Mark I or R5, really give this 28mm a shot. Give it a shot. You'll be surprised. So I'm loving it. I think that's it. That's the rundown, you know. I can get into some other different things. I've made a lot of investment in RF lenses. I have the RF 15 to 35. I got this lens as full frame. It basically replaced my, when I upgraded from cameras, from the C100 to the C200, I was rocking out with the Sigma R 18 to 35 for the longest, and I love that lens. But the thing about that lens is it wouldn't work on my full frame camera. So even though sometimes you got to spend more money, this lens is a 15 to 35 on my Canon R6, which is great. It's a real estate lens, f2.8, image stabilized, once again giving me 7 to 8 stops coordinated. But it works on my C70 as well. So on my C70 is giving me like a 24 to 50, which is a great little focal length to get a master shot. And if I need to use my R6 to get the more tighter punching shot, I can do that, which I normally do when I'm doing 2 cameras and I'm running and gunning and I don't want to bring the big boy out. So I highly recommend the 15-35. I don't think it's a must, you know, lens. Like, you can get a 24mm, get a 50mm, start out your kit, and you've got a nice little setup, because this is a $1,700 lens, as well as the 24-70 is like a $2,200 lens, if I'm not mistaken. If I had to choose between these two, it'd be 24-70, but if I would have had a C70 only, it'd be the 15-35, just because of the lens equivalent. But for some of you, if you're not shooting extreme low light, the 24-105 is not to be slept on. This is such a great lens. They finally came out with an RF, the 24-105 f2.8 version, because sometimes I sleep on this lens. I bought this lens because I got it for a great price used, because people are always trying to move up and make the jump. But sometimes when I have this lens, it's lighter than the 24-70, it's lighter than the 15-35. It's an f4, and it's constant aperture. Constant aperture means no matter what range I change at, it's always going to be an f4. So when you add a 105 at an f4, you're gonna get a nice little shallow depth of field. It's image stabilized, it's silent focusing. It's just more excellent quality done by Canon. A lot of benefits to mirrorless cameras. Don't sleep on DSLR, especially if you just photo focus. You can get some great deals on them just because this is the new tech and everybody's jumping to it, rightfully so. RF 70-200 is something I'm considering because it is a phenomenal lens. It is the lightest 70-200 created by Canon, almost a pound lighter than the early editions. The optical quality is phenomenal, and that's the thing what these mirrorless cameras are allowing. These mirrorless capabilities, the RF mount is allowing, is that you're able to get better quality at lighter weights in smaller sizes, which I sincerely appreciate. I'm gonna get the RF 70-200 more for traveling because I just came back from Curacao. I'm gonna drop a lot of content on that, and it was some times where I was like, you know, I wish I would have had it. I even left my 24-105 home, and I was like, man, I should have brought it because I didn't need, you know, f2.8 in some situations because I wanted to show the vibrant, you know, colors of Curacao, downtown Williamstead. A little bit more range would have been more appreciated, but I didn't enable crop on the Canon M6 Markii multiple times to turn that 70mm into a 1.6, so that was getting me close to a 100mm equivalent. So I appreciate those capabilities. And I said, we're gonna wrap it up there. As I say so many times, there's no such thing as a perfect camera. It is what is the perfect camera right now for you and your budget. And right now you might be at a point where getting, you know, an older mirrorless camera system or something else to get into creating and shooting, getting your content out is worth it. But I will say, you know, just find the right brand for you, find the right company for you, make the right choices. And if you are buying a mirrorless camera, don't sleep on the EF lenses, you know, the older lenses that was for DSLRs, because they can be adapted. But with that said, we wrapping up right there. No such thing as a perfect camera. Is what is the perfect camera and lens for your budget, for where you at right now in your journey. And as always, stay creative, be courageous, and get on your grind.